immigrants came from Russia as well as the Ukraine. They arrived here as immigrants in the years 1920 and 1923. Life was pretty difficult during the Russian Revolution, so it meant sustenance and meant starting a new life, and that's why they came here. Life for my family was, at least my mother and her siblings and my grandmother's, was especially difficult because the loss of my grandfather as and I lived in an area called Brownsville. The neighborhood in which I lived was primarily Jewish, Caucasian obviously. However, 1 block away was a street where we used to refer to it as the United Nations, from every country in the world, or appeared to be every country in the world. We all lived together, got along well, but it was segregated in the sense that this 1 block contained all these people. Remember, there were houses, 6 family houses on that street, and each apartment had a different person, different family members who came from all over the world. I never felt like an outsider at all. It was an interesting area. It was a primarily Jewish area, but different ethnic groups lived there as well. Family was very important. We all lived very, very close. We didn't have automobiles to drive around. We did take subways and trains, but the family lived within a short distance of each other. When I say short distance, a mile, mile and a half, but we used to see each other every weekend, and it was very, very close. Everybody was in the same environment, and we had to go through it together. Although we survived, the big reason, or the major reason, the close family meant a lot, and everybody living within that short distance, as I mentioned, was very important. The community had mostly immigrants of various ages. Remember, I was born there, my friends were born there, but there were seniors who were in their 70s, 80s, if they lasted that long, who lived in the same houses we did. We lived in a small apartment, 2 bedrooms. I was fortunate to live on the same street as my grandmother and uncles. So it was a small area, but we got to see each other daily, often more than once a day. The other interesting part is when I grew up, I spent an awful lot of time with my parents at lunchtime. Unlike what happens now, I would come home every single day at lunchtime, eat, and listen to the Yiddish radio. And that's where I learned how to speak Yiddish. Ik kan reden in Yiddish for a year. My Baba, grandmother, spoke Yiddish. My mother spoke English and Yiddish. My father, Yiddish and English. Come to think of it, the whole family spoke English and Yiddish. And I grew up in that culture. And also, it was an opportunity for me to speak to my grandmother, who could only speak Yiddish, no different than different groups coming into the United States who can only speak 1 language and not English. The big thing was the economics of having to survive and having available money to do things. It isn't the same kind of culture as we have now, where everybody's on a league or a team and this and that. We developed our own leagues. We developed our own teams. We played in the local schoolyards. We traveled everywhere by bus or train and made a life of it. The difficult part of it comes back to the economics. For myself, it meant working part-time at the age of 12. So I had enough money. I never asked my parents for money. Of course, it was limited. I think it taught me a strong work ethic. So I worked young, and that same work ethic continued on my entire life to this day.
The argument simply does not hold that the white race, being a minority, rather being a majority in the United States, should turn over to a group of people only removed from slavery 80 years and only removed from the jungle by a few hundred years. Turn over to them the control of our entire civilization. The basis of common law is the custom of the people, and if the custom of the people in Anderson County is to keep the races separate, then the Supreme Court law doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. In 11 years, in every southern state, the segregation laws we are fighting for today were written, every one of them, by the Ku Klux Klan, which saved the South.
So there was a lot of fear in the world, a lot of concern. And obviously, if this is my space, people want to have that space. And there was prejudice, there was no question about it.
Did you think you were influenced by that prejudice?
None at all. The neighborhood, besides being Jewish, it was multicultural. It was like a UN. There were so many different groups in there. There was a big or a large black population, and that population was friends. We served in the Army, we played on the same baseball teams, and they were close friends. Friends who would eat in my home, I would eat in their home. Although my mother thought, it was a little bit more dangerous, but it never really fazed me. I went there, they came to me, and she welcomed them, but she was always a little worried. But I think that's part of the culture of growing up in a foreign country, in a difficult war period, Russian Revolution, coming here, migrating, living in a area that probably had 200,000 people from Eastern Europe. It was the largest Jewish community at the time in the United States. We also went to a city schools close by, and everybody from the street or the immediate neighborhood was in school with you all the time. It was a tight-knit group in that point of view. Now, I can still remember the end of World War II.
I only wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to witness this day. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
I was, at the end of World War II, I was 6 years old. Wars are going on, and it almost feels like it's always going on, and it's very, very difficult. The Korean War started, so we go through one war to another war, go through Vietnam. Look at all the stuff we've been going through in the last 20 years. You can call them skirmishes, you can call them war. There's a lot of pressure on people in this world right now. I think that we probably never learn enough from all these wars and how to go past them. Big problem in this world, everybody has their own vested interests. Everybody wants to do what they want to do. You got to do what's best, but you got to be fair with everybody. Obviously you change over all these years. Society, I felt very, very close and tight with the community. Now, communities are not as tight. Everybody's going in different directions. Everybody has their own needs, and it seems to be separating more and more. Sure, you see what's going on, in this country right now, and everything seems to be going in different directions. Everybody has their point of view, and it's a hard environment right now, I think, for young people growing up. Much harder than when I was a kid. Ours was more simple. There were certain basic things we were concerned with: sustenance, having enough money to survive, living in a tight area with limited amount of income. So survival, coming from Europe and coming into the United States, the game was to survive with your family. I think right now it's much more difficult. I think the values have changed over a period of time. People are more self-centered. What am I getting out of life? How do I get ahead economically? What can I do for society is was more important, I think, in the older days when you had a tighter community, tighter relationship with people, tighter understanding of the values of other people as well as your own. You got to keep an open mind, you got to learn from everybody, and I think it's important to understand other people's viewpoints because everybody's coming from a different economic level, have certain needs, different religions, different thoughts, different backgrounds, different families, different needs.